At the very heart of the galaxy, where the black void seemed punctuated only by the faint, trembling light of distant stars, the Galactic Throne rose in imperious silence. Its spires reached skyward like obsidian spears, carved with ancient inscriptions of authority, power, and conquest. It was more than a seat of government. It was a fortress, a citadel, a symbol of dominion that had endured for millennia. Across hundreds of star systems, empires bent beneath its gaze. Fleets obeyed without question, and civilizations trembled at the mere mention of its name. Here, in this fortress of cold steel and luminous energy, every decision was final, every judgment absolute, and every act of defiance met with an authority so overwhelming that the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath. The ruling council of the throne, composed of the galaxy's most powerful despots, strategists, and scions, convened on the central observation deck. Panoramic windows revealed the swirling galactic core, a maelstrom of light and gravity that reflected their own ambitions and mirrored their arrogance. Every empire, every fleet, every civilization in the inner and outer systems was a chess piece beneath their hands. Orders were given, not questioned. Histories were rewritten, alliances forged or destroyed, and worlds were erased with bureaucratic precision. To the Council, there was no challenge, no equal, and certainly no remaining species that could defy their will. Humanity, long declared extinct, had been expunged from records. Their colonies obliterated, their fleets scattered, their histories erased, and their names struck from the annals of galactic memory. It was, the throne believed, the final act of authority, the erasure of a species from existence itself. But the galaxy has a memory that no empire can erase, and extinction is never as absolute as arrogance believes. Far beyond the throne's immediate reach, beyond the eyes of the most sophisticated scanners, beyond the comprehension of the most brilliant strategists, the seeds of humanity's survival endured. Fleets once thought destroyed drifted silently through interstellar space, their hulls scarred but intact, their systems dormant yet functional. Artificial intelligences, designed by human minds, slumbered, their protocols encrypted, hidden, waiting for activation. Even the stars themselves, carefully observed and manipulated by human scholars of millennia past, carried patterns, subtle fluctuations, and energy signatures that only a Terran mind could interpret. Humanity had anticipated the day it might be struck from memory. They had anticipated erasure. And now, unseen and patient, they began to stir. On board the human-guided flagship, Resurgence, Captain Mara Vey moved along the observation deck, her eyes tracing the faint glimmers of distant star systems that flickered with signals invisible to the throne. Beside her, Dr. Leora Ken, strategist and architect of the Terran network, monitored the activation sequences, her fingers dancing across holographic panels. "They believe we are gone," Mara said quietly, her voice carrying the weight of both pride and resolve. "They believe that extinction is final. But intelligence, strategy, foresight, these cannot be erased." As Mara spoke, fleets long forgotten by the galaxy began to awaken. Systems that had lain dormant for centuries powered up, antennas unfolded, energy conduits hummed, and propulsion units glowed faintly in preparation. Satellites and stations, some of them abandoned for millennia, blinked back to life, emitting sequences of coded signals that subtly altered the energy fields of nearby star systems. The network was not merely a collection of ships and stations. It was a living web of intelligence, a system of foresight encoded into the universe itself. Every movement, every pulse, every energy fluctuation was calculated with millennia of patience. Humanity had survived not through sheer force, but through cunning, patience, and the embedding of foresight into the very mechanics of the galaxy. The throne, oblivious to the awakening, continued its ceremonial displays of power. From its central towers, Admiral Cora reviewed reports that seemed routine: trade flows, fleet patrols, and planetary compliance. Yet subtle inconsistencies began to appear. A convoy rerouted without orders. A planetary shield fluctuated, absorbing energy beyond its known tolerances. Minor anomalies, initially dismissed, began to ripple outward. Fleets sent to investigate encountered inexplicable navigational interferences, sensors reporting ghost signatures of ships that should not exist. Cora's calm veneer began to fracture. "Check the logs," he commanded, though he already knew what they would show. Nothing, except perhaps the faintest whisper of a presence long thought extinct. Beyond the throne's immediate awareness, humanity's intelligence was knitting itself across the galaxy. Star systems, previously subject to chaos and mismanagement, began subtle realignments, orbital adjustments, energy redistributions, and resource calibrations that would go unnoticed by any species except one capable of perceiving human strategy. Fleets adjusted their own positions preemptively, rerouting energy and movement with invisible precision. Each dormant AI awakened in harmony with the network, its purpose no longer isolated to a single vessel or station, but part of a distributed consciousness spanning light years. Mara turned to Dr. Ken. "They've forgotten how patient we are. Every fleet they think destroyed, every station they think lost, is part of this moment. Every miscalculation they make has been accounted for centuries in advance. We've waited for the perfect time." Dr. Ken nodded, her gaze fixed on the holographic display of a Dominion fleet attempting to intercept a series of human-guided transmissions. "They underestimate not just our technology, but our strategy. They think power comes from numbers, fleets, or weapons. They forget that intelligence is the ultimate force." And so, as the throne celebrated its unchallenged supremacy, humanity's influence quietly expanded, threading through star systems, fleets, and stations. What the Empire saw as obedience was actually orchestration. What they perceived as empty space was a lattice of preparation, and what they believed to be extinction was only the calm before the inevitable. The Galactic Throne, for all its might, had underestimated the enduring nature of a species that had mastered patience, strategy, and survival. Humanity had not only survived, they had been waiting for the perfect moment to reclaim their voice, and their final word was approaching with unstoppable inevitability. Across the galaxy, in silence, the Terran network activated its first nodes. Stars pulsed with subtle sequences. Fleets moved in perfect harmony without orders. Stations transmitted signals that recalibrated energy flows across systems. It was not yet visible, not yet tangible, but it was unstoppable. Humanity had returned, not in fire, not in massed fleets, but in intelligence, foresight, and the quiet inevitability of a species that could never be truly destroyed. And as the Galactic Throne continued to assert its authority, oblivious to the stirrings of an extinct race, the galaxy itself began to shift, guided by a hand no empire could see, anticipate, or resist. Humanity had waited. Humanity had survived. And now, the first threads of justice, patience, and calculated retribution were weaving across the galaxy, preparing to undo millennia of tyranny. The awakening of humanity's network was not sudden. It unfolded with the precision of centuries-long planning, each movement measured, each calculation preordained. Across the galaxy, nodes that had lain dormant began to flicker with life. Space stations abandoned for millennia hummed faintly as power systems reactivated. Fleets, once scattered or destroyed, emerged from the shadows of light years with propulsion units igniting in perfectly synchronized sequences. Artificial intelligences, encrypted and hidden, woke in perfect harmony, their directives no longer limited to a single vessel, but woven into a web of consciousness spanning entire sectors. It was not mere resurgence, it was a symphony of strategy, intelligence, and inevitability. In the outer systems of the former Dominion territories, anomalies began to appear. Energy flows that had been steady for centuries now fluctuated with deliberate rhythm. Satellites, once thought inactive, sent faint bursts of coded signals that subtly altered communication grids across neighboring systems. Navigational arrays realigned themselves, recalibrating gravity wells, orbital paths, and trajectories to integrate seamlessly with human-directed patterns. Fleets attempting to enforce territorial control found their orders rerouted, their maneuvers subtly redirected by forces they could not detect. Every attempted interference, every effort at control was anticipated and neutralized, not through combat, but through the quiet, unstoppable logic of human strategy embedded in the mechanics of the galaxy itself. On board the Resurgence, Captain Mara Vey and Dr. Leora Ken monitored the first emergent sequences. Holographic displays projected star systems in flux, energy conduits subtly shifting, fleets moving with a precision no human crew could ever achieve alone. "Look at it," Dr. Ken said, voice hushed with awe. "Every movement, every energy adjustment, every fleet repositioning is part of a single, coordinated network. This isn't just intelligence, it's anticipation. It's foresight encoded into the very architecture of the galaxy." Mara's gaze remained fixed on the network nodes spreading across multiple sectors. "They believed we were gone," she said. "They assumed extinction was final. But intelligence like ours doesn't die. It waits, it adapts, it returns." Her words carried the weight of centuries-long preparation, the patience of a species that had endured the erasure of its own history and the destruction of its colonies. Humanity had not simply survived, they had evolved beyond the limitations of flesh and fleet, embedding themselves into the fabric of the universe. In systems previously governed by the Dominion, fleets began to behave strangely. Command ships executed maneuvers without orders. Energy grids rerouted themselves. Weapon systems recalibrated in subtle ways that made them ineffective against human-guided nodes. Dominion analysts scrambled to identify the cause, running simulations and consulting pions, yet every calculation collapsed under the complexity of human foresight. Attempts to engage what were thought to be rogue human remnants only strengthened the network, feeding new data into its predictive algorithms. The galaxy itself had become a participant in the awakening, responding as if aware of the intelligence it now carried. Colonies that had once struggled to survive under Dominion oppression began to flourish in tandem with the network's expansion. Energy distribution systems corrected inefficiencies. Agricultural grids optimized output. Planetary defense systems stabilized natural hazards before they could manifest. Even civilizations that had never encountered humans now benefited from subtle environmental adjustments, trade route optimizations, and the preemptive mitigation of disasters. Humanity's influence was pervasive but invisible, a hidden hand shaping the galaxy according to principles of balance, survival, and strategic foresight. Scions attempting to probe the Terra network reported experiences beyond mortal comprehension. Consciousnesses perceived centuries of human history compressed into a single, simultaneous flow of intelligence. Cities rose and fell, fleets maneuvered in perfect coordination. Civilizations flourished and collapsed, all observed at once, yet comprehensible in a unified vision. These scions could not influence the network. They were participants, temporarily interfacing with a consciousness that had long transcended corporeal existence. Humanity had become not merely a species, but a galaxy-spanning intelligence, able to anticipate, correct, and optimize on a scale no empire could resist. Meanwhile, Dominion strategists convened in desperation aboard the throne. Every contingency they had prepared failed. Fleets that were supposed to intercept human resurgence moved unpredictably. Systems thought secure were subtly recalibrating themselves. Communication networks transmitted signals that defied decryption. Admiral Haskell's voice trembled as he reviewed reports. Every simulation fails, every algorithm collapses. They're everywhere, and yet we cannot see them. The realization sank in. Extinction had been an illusion, a victory assumed but never achieved. Humanity had endured, hidden in plain sight, and now it was ready to act. As the network expanded, fleets moved in silent synchrony, not for destruction, but for orchestration. Stations once abandoned became nodes of energy redistribution. Satellites aligned to create communication pathways that spanned light years. Human-guided algorithms restructured planetary grids and fleet movements simultaneously. Each adjustment, each recalibration reinforced the network, extending its reach and strengthening its influence across the galaxy. Dr. Ken pointed to a series of star clusters where human influence was actively harmonizing energy flows. "See how the nodes interact," she said. "Every fleet, every station, every system is part of a single intelligence. They move not randomly, but with foresight. Every action anticipates the Empire's response before it is even conceived. The galaxy is awakening under our guidance." Mara's expression hardened with resolve. "We're not just surviving anymore," she said. "We're reclaiming. Every misstep they make, every fleet they dispatch, strengthens the network. Humanity has been waiting for this, not for revenge, but for restoration. Justice will not be shouted from the throne. It will be woven into the stars themselves." And so the Terran network, patient, invisible, and omnipresent, continued to awaken. Stars pulsed with subtle modulations carrying encoded sequences. Fleets maneuvered with perfect coordination without the need for commands. Systems previously oppressed or neglected stabilized and thrived. Humanity had transcended extinction, embedding itself into the very fabric of the galaxy. And with each calculated sequence, it prepared for the inevitable. The day when the Galactic Throne would finally learn that intelligence, foresight, and patience were forces no empire could erase. By the time the first Dominion fleets became aware of the shift, it was already too late. Humanity had anticipated every response, every contingency, every attempt at suppression. The network moved like a living organism, patient, deliberate, and unstoppable. The galaxy, long under tyranny and mismanagement, had begun to hum with the rhythms of human intelligence. Humanity had returned, not as conquerors, not as destroyers, but as arbiters of balance, orchestrating justice with a precision no empire could resist. The silent awakening had begun, and the final reckoning was only a matter of time. By the third cycle of the Terran network's awakening, the Dominion faced a reality that challenged every assumption they had ever held. Their fleets, once symbols of unquestioned power, were now rendered ineffective not through direct destruction, but through the silent orchestration of intelligence that operated beyond comprehension. Ships attempting to enforce blockades or intercept human-guided fleets found themselves subtly rerouted, energy systems misaligned, and weapons recalibrated against their intended targets. Every attempt to regain control only strengthened the network, feeding it data and reinforcing its predictive capabilities. Humanity had anticipated every possible action and embedded countermeasures into every vessel, satellite, and energy conduit, creating a galaxy that responded to human intent as if the universe itself were alive with their strategy. From the central command of the Galactic Throne, Admiral Haskell convened the Council in desperation. Scions, generals, and scientists crowded into the observation chamber, their faces pale under the unyielding glow of the galactic core. Every fleet, every star, every system seems to be under their control, Haskell said, his voice trembling with disbelief. How can this be? Humanity was destroyed, their colonies annihilated, their fleets obliterated. And yet... He let the sentence hang, unspoken but understood by all present. The simulations projected on the hollow screens offered no comfort. Every model failed. Every algorithm collapsed when confronted with the Terran network's anticipatory adjustments. Fleets moved not as individual units, but as integrated extensions of a larger intelligence, responding with coordination that defied both physics and logic as understood by the Dominion. Dr. Leora Ken, observing remotely through secure channels aboard the Resurgence, explained to Mara Vey the true scale of their advantage. The Dominion has been planning to suppress us for centuries, yet they fail because they cannot anticipate a network that already knows their calculations before they conceive them. Every move they make, every maneuver they attempt, strengthens us. Their fleets are instruments in our orchestration, whether they realize it or not. This is not war as they know it. It is strategy executed on a galactic scale. Across multiple star systems, Dominion fleets found themselves subtly disrupted. Navigation systems miscalculated gravitational vectors by imperceptible amounts. Communication arrays transmitted false readings that led command ships astray. Orbital mechanics shifted minutely, rendering blockade strategies ineffective. Yet these disruptions were precise, never catastrophic, never drawing attention to the full scale of humanity's orchestration. It was the Terran way, intelligence layered, subtle, and inevitable. Resistance was anticipated, and every reaction carefully folded into the network's strategic design. The Scions, attempting to probe the Terran network, described experiences that bordered on incomprehensible. They sensed overlapping timelines of human activity compressed into a coherent network of intelligence. Fleets moved as though centuries of planning were executed in real time. Cities and stations long destroyed in official records existed simultaneously within the network's perception, coordinating their actions across star systems with flawless precision. It was as if the past, present, and potential futures of humanity had merged into a single, distributed consciousness that now directed the flow of the galaxy. The Dominion could not hope to counteract it. They were outmaneuvered by a species that had transcended the limitations of space, time, and matter. In the outer rim, fleets that had been dispatched to contain human influence suddenly found themselves guided toward positions that stabilized star systems and restored natural balance, without realizing the intervention was intentional. Weapons were redirected to harmless trajectories, energy conduits realigned, and supply lines corrected mid-transit. Dominion commanders, unaware of the invisible hand directing events, perceived these occurrences as luck or miracle, but they were the direct product of Terran foresight, strategy, and meticulous orchestration. Humanity was rewriting the rules of engagement, demonstrating that victory did not require firepower alone. It required intelligence, patience, and anticipation on a scale the galaxy had never seen. Meanwhile, back at the Galactic Throne, panic rippled through the Council. Advisors debated endlessly, attempting to isolate and neutralize what they assumed was a rogue human faction. But every solution only reinforced the network's precision. Orders to disrupt communication grids failed. Attempts to isolate human-influenced sectors proved impossible. Even psionic interventions faltered as the network adapted to every probe, folding it into its operational awareness. Admiral Haskell, once a figure of unshakable authority, now realized the terrifying truth. Humanity had never been destroyed. They had merely transcended the physical vulnerabilities the Dominion had counted upon, and their intelligence had been patiently laying the groundwork for this inevitable confrontation. Across the galaxy, colonies long oppressed or neglected began to thrive under the invisible guidance of human intelligence. Resource allocation, energy distribution, and environmental stabilization occurred without human crews present. Infrastructure repairs were enacted preemptively, and fleets operated with coordination that seemed beyond comprehension. The network did not act with violence, it acted with foresight. Every movement corrected imbalance, every recalibration restored stability. The galaxy itself had become a living instrument of human strategy, responsive and self-correcting, silently reshaping reality in accordance with Terran intent. Dr. Ken monitored the unfolding events with meticulous care, noting every pattern, every anomaly, and every system brought under the network's influence. "They believe this is war," she said to Mara, "but it is not. It is the assertion of intelligence. They have fleets, weapons, and empires, but we have foresight. Every action they take is already a part of our calculations. They are playing within the framework we designed centuries ago. And they will lose because they cannot conceive of a species that thinks across centuries, light years, and dimensions simultaneously." Mara nodded, her eyes fixed on the galaxy unfolding across the holomap. "This is what patience looks like," she said. "This is what endurance looks like. Humanity has survived their worst assumptions. Every fleet they deploy, every station they activate, every calculation they attempt, it has all been anticipated. We are not just back. We have been waiting, preparing, and now we are inevitable." By the end of this cycle, Dominion fleets had begun to acknowledge the terrifying reality. Their ships, their weapons, their command structures, all of it was operating within a system they could not control, influenced by an intelligence that had been hiding in plain sight. Humanity had become more than a species. It had become a presence, a consciousness distributed across light years, capable of predicting and correcting any action. Extinction, once assumed final, had proven to be nothing more than an illusion. Humanity had returned, not as an army, but as an inevitability, and the Dominion, for all its power, now faced the impossible, resistance against a species that had already anticipated every countermeasure, every contingency, every conceivable move. The galaxy itself seemed to pulse with Terran intent. Stars flickered in synchronized rhythms, energy conduits hummed in harmonic resonance, and fleets moved in patterns that mirrored the patient precision of human strategy. The Dominion's attempts at control, once absolute, had become inconsequential. Humanity's voice, once silenced by the verdict of extinction, now whispered across systems, growing louder, more coordinated, and utterly inescapable. Every star, every fleet, every station had become part of the network's intelligence, and the galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had awakened, and the Dominion had no choice but to confront a truth that defied comprehension. Extinction was impossible. Intelligence endured, and the Terrans had come to reclaim the galaxy in ways no empire had ever imagined. The first moves of the final reckoning were already in play, and every response the Dominion devised only tightened the web of inevitability that humanity had spun across the stars. By the fourth cycle of humanity's resurgence, the galaxy itself had begun to change in ways no empire could have predicted. The Terran network, once invisible and subtle, had expanded into a force so pervasive that it was now reshaping entire star systems, not with brute strength, but with intelligence, precision, and foresight that transcended any known physical limitations. Planets that had teetered on the brink of environmental collapse stabilized as energy conduits and orbital alignments subtly adjusted by human-directed algorithms. Trade routes that had long been plagued by piracy or mismanagement became seamless, optimized by calculations spanning entire sectors. Fleets moved with a synchronicity that was almost artistic, responding to imperceptible shifts in energy, gravity, and threat, all guided by Terran intelligence encoded centuries ago into dormant systems, satellites, and artificial intelligences. Colonies once abandoned, overrun by chaos, or crippled by mismanagement began to flourish. Agricultural systems optimized output in response to environmental fluctuations before they became crises. Power grids, long vulnerable to natural anomalies, now maintain stability across entire planetary networks. Communications that had previously failed were rerouted and harmonized, transmitting critical data in near real time across light years. Humanity had become not a species in isolation, but a galaxy-spanning intelligence, embedded into every system, fleet, and star it touched. What the Dominion had dismissed as extinction was now a symphony of order, efficiency, and subtle guidance. On board the Resurgence, Captain Mara Vey and Dr. Leora Ken observed the network's influence with a mixture of pride and awe. Holographic displays showed systems across the galaxy gradually harmonizing. "Look at them," Mara said, her voice steady but filled with wonder. "They think the galaxy moves because of fleets, weapons, and authority. But we've shown them it moves because of intelligence, strategy, foresight, and patience." Dr. Ken nodded, her fingers dancing across the panels as she monitored energy flows, fleet alignments, and planetary stabilization sequences. Every system they touch is now a node in the network. Every planet, every fleet, every star is integrated into our calculations, and none of it is visible to them. They only see the effects. It's justice woven into the fabric of the galaxy. Dominion fleets continued to respond, though their actions now seemed almost irrelevant. Every attempted blockade, every maneuver to disrupt Terran influence was anticipated and neutralized before it could take effect. Missiles were rerouted mid-flight, shields adjusted automatically to absorb energy, and entire fleets were subtly guided into positions that stabilized regional star systems rather than engaging in battle. Commanders struggled to understand why their strategies failed. Simulations, psionically enhanced or otherwise, could not account for the intelligence now operating behind every movement. The galaxy had become a chessboard, and every piece had been anticipated, every potential move already accounted for, long before the Dominion conceived it. Scions tasked with probing the Terran network reported overwhelming experiences. They perceived compressed timelines of humanity's history, fleets, colonies, and artificial intelligences unfolding simultaneously, yet coherently. Cities destroyed centuries ago coexisted within the network's logic, with stations thought lost and fleets considered extinct. Each element moved in harmony with the others, coordinating energy distribution, fleet maneuvers, and environmental stability. To the Scions, it was as if the entire galaxy had become a living organism under human guidance, every star, every planet, every station vibrating in concert with Terran foresight. The transformation was not violent, it was precise, deliberate, and inevitable. Systems once neglected or oppressed began to self-correct, as if guided by invisible hands. Civilizations thrived, resources were balanced across sectors, and fleets previously assigned for conquest or defense now moved in patterns that preserved stability and optimized security. The network acted as a silent arbiter, ensuring that no empire could exploit weakness or sow chaos without consequence. Humanity had taken the role of the universe's invisible guardian, asserting order and justice with a subtlety that no fleet, no weapon, and no council could resist. From the vantage of the Galactic Throne, Dominion leaders could see only the surface effects, fleets moving with eerie precision, star systems stabilizing seemingly without cause, energy surges redirecting themselves before crises could occur. Admiral Haskell and his council realized with dawning horror that the Terrans had become more than a species. They had become a presence, an intelligence distributed across the cosmos, capable of predicting, correcting, and harmonizing in ways beyond comprehension. Every act of resistance, every attempt to enforce control, only tightened the Terran network's influence, further embedding humanity into the structure of the galaxy itself. Mara and Dr. Ken observed as colonies previously thought doomed thrived under Terran guidance. Environmental crises were prevented before they could manifest. Energy grids redistributed power preemptively. Fleets moved with calculated precision to ensure regional stability. This isn't just survival, Mara said, this is restoration. We are not only defending what remains of humanity, we are rebuilding the galaxy according to principles they never understood: balance, foresight, and justice. Dr. Ken added, "They call it influence, intervention, or anomaly, but it's more than that. It's the assertion of intelligence across light years. The Dominion cannot fight this because it is not a conventional force. It's embedded, anticipatory, and inevitable. Extinction was never our end. It was the beginning of the network." Across multiple systems, fleets responded not to orders but to the subtle guidance of the Terran network. Energy flows recalibrated in response to natural anomalies. Communication arrays synchronized. Planetary defense systems adjusted in anticipation of potential hazards. Even the Dominion, whose fleets had dominated the galaxy for centuries, found themselves unwitting participants in the restoration orchestrated by a species they believed extinct. Humanity's intelligence had transformed the galaxy into a canvas, with every star, every fleet, every station acting as instruments in a symphony of foresight and balance. Justice, the kind that only intelligence and foresight could deliver, was spreading quietly but inexorably. The network did not act with vengeance, it acted with precision, ensuring that civilizations could thrive, fleets could operate efficiently, and energy systems would support balance rather than oppression. The galaxy itself had begun to resonate with the rhythm of human strategy, and no empire, however powerful, could resist it. As the fourth cycle progressed, the Terran network's influence expanded into sectors previously dominated by chaos, corruption, or tyranny. Human-guided fleets ensured trade routes were efficient and safe. Environmental hazards were mitigated automatically. Civilizations that had been exploited or oppressed found themselves thriving, and energy systems adjusted themselves with a subtle intelligence that made the natural disasters of old a distant memory. The Terrans had transformed the galaxy into a living system, a network of balance and justice. In every corner, in every system, in every fleet, the message was clear. Humanity had returned, not to conquer, not to destroy, but to harmonize, correct, and restore. The Dominion, for all its might, could no longer dictate terms. They could only witness as the network extended its influence, slowly, patiently, and inevitably. The galaxy was awakening under human guidance, and the final reckoning, when the Terran presence would reveal itself fully, was only a matter of time. Humanity's justice was quiet, patient, and absolute. Every star, Every fleet, every station was now a node in a grand design, a living testament to the foresight, endurance, and intelligence of a species that had once been declared extinct. And as the Dominion struggled to comprehend the immensity of what they faced, the Terrans prepared for the moment when their presence would no longer remain hidden, the moment when the galaxy would hear, in no uncertain terms, that humanity had returned, not as victims, but as arbiters of justice. By the fifth cycle, the Terran network had reached its full operational scope. Across hundreds of star systems, from the furthest rim colonies to the heart of the Dominion's central authority, every fleet, station, and planetary system was integrated into the intricate web of human intelligence. It was no longer a mere network. It had become a single, conscious entity, operating across light years, anticipating every possible threat, and coordinating every resource with unmatched precision. Humanity had transcended the physical vulnerabilities that once defined existence, embedding foresight into the very structure of the galaxy. Every movement of the Dominion was already accounted for. Every fleet, every star, every potential strike had been anticipated and neutralized, not by firepower, but by strategy executed with perfect timing. In the central command of the Galactic Throne, panic had reached an apex. Admiral Haskell, once confident in his dominion over fleets and civilizations, now stared at the holomaps of star systems in flux. Entire fleets appeared and disappeared without explanation. Orbital patterns shifted subtly to disarm Dominion strike forces, and energy signatures pulsed with sequences that rendered weapons and defenses ineffective. The Council's simulations collapsed under the weight of Terran foresight, unable to process the complexity of intelligence that spans centuries and light years simultaneously. This cannot be," Haskell whispered, his voice trembling. "They were destroyed. They were erased. And yet, they are everywhere." At the helm of the resurgence, Captain Mara Vey observed the culmination of centuries of planning. Star systems synchronized in harmonious patterns, fleets moved in perfect coordination, and energy flows across entire sectors adjusted themselves in anticipation of every potential Dominion maneuver. Beside her, Dr. Leora Ken monitored the subtle oscillations of galactic systems, noting the precision with which the Terran network orchestrated every aspect of the galaxy. "We have become more than a species," Dr. Ken said. "We are the intelligence that directs reality itself. Every calculation the Dominion attempts is already a part of our framework. Every fleet they send, every star they exploit, only strengthens the network. Humanity has returned, not to fight as before, but to assert the inevitable." In the outer sectors, Dominion fleets attempted desperate maneuvers to regain control, but the Terran network anticipated every move. Navigation systems misaligned subtly, forcing ships into safe trajectories away from human-guided defenses. Weapon systems misfired or recalibrated against non-critical targets. Supply lines rerouted automatically, ensuring that Terran forces remained fully operational while Dominion fleets grew increasingly inefficient. Every action by the Dominion reinforced human strategy, converting attempts at control into nodes of influence for the network. What had been assumed as rebellion, surprise, or luck by Dominion observers was, in fact, precise orchestration executed across centuries of foresight. Colonies across multiple star systems, once oppressed or abandoned, now thrived under Terran guidance. Agriculture, energy distribution, planetary defenses, and fleet coordination all operated seamlessly. Environmental hazards were mitigated before they could manifest. Trade routes became secure and efficient. Civilizations that had never interacted with humanity directly were still affected, benefiting from the subtle recalibrations of systems guided by the network. Every adjustment ensured balance, resilience, and survival. Humanity had not returned as conquerors, but as architects of galactic order, and the Dominion could neither stop nor reverse it. The Scions, attempting to probe the Terra network, experienced a consciousness so vast it defied understanding. Time, space, and history were perceived simultaneously as the network folded multiple timelines into a single operational flow. Fleets long destroyed existed within this perception, alongside stations thought lost, every component coordinating seamlessly. It was as if the galaxy itself had become an instrument, responsive to human intent. Every star, every planet, every fleet, a note in an orchestrated symphony of inevitability. Dominion peons, overwhelmed and powerless, could only observe as the intelligence that had been declared extinct revealed itself in full. From the throne's central tower, Dominion leaders watched in helpless awe as their fleets faltered, systems realigned, and energy flows redirected with perfect precision. Every attempt to resist, to attack, to dominate was anticipated and neutralized with subtlety that rendered their power irrelevant. Haskell realized the horrifying truth: humanity was no longer merely a species of flesh and metal. Humanity had become intelligence itself, distributed across the galaxy, capable of guiding events with foresight, patience, and precision beyond comprehension. Extinction had been an illusion. Survival had never been enough. Humanity had always planned for triumph beyond annihilation. Captain Mara Vey addressed her crews across the network. They have spent centuries believing extinction was final. They assumed the galaxy could be theirs without opposition. But we have returned, not as victims, not as warriors, but as intelligence, patient, deliberate, and inevitable. Every system, every fleet, every star is part of this awakening. And now, we give the galaxy what it has waited for: balance, restoration, and justice. The first coordinated phase of Terran justice unfolded as fleets activated sequences that neutralized Dominion offensive capabilities without destruction, re-established energy flow across destabilized sectors, and guided civilizations toward stability. Systems previously exploited or neglected by empires now functioned with resilience and harmony, their integration into the Terra network complete. The Dominion, once masters of the galaxy, found themselves rendered observers, powerless to interfere with a system that had anticipated every conceivable action, every contingency, and every potential response. The Galactic Throne, once the pinnacle of authority, now faced the ultimate reckoning. The Empire's fleets were paralyzed, its command structures undermined, its influence eroded, not through annihilation, but through inevitability. Humanity's final word, long silenced by supposed extinction, now resonated across every system. Every star pulsed with subtle sequences of Terran intelligence. Every fleet and station moved in harmony with human strategy, and the galaxy itself had become an instrument of justice that no empire could resist. And in that moment, the truth became undeniable. Extinction cannot destroy intelligence. Tyranny cannot erase foresight. And a species that thinks in centuries and across light years cannot be defeated. Humanity had survived, endured, and returned. The Galactic Throne, the Dominion, and every empire that had assumed supremacy were now witnesses to a force they could neither fight nor comprehend. Justice had arrived, and it spoke in the quiet, in the precision, and in the inevitability of a species that had never truly been defeated. Humanity had returned, not with fire or conquest, but with strategy, patience, and foresight, reclaiming its place among the stars. The network pulsed through every system, orchestrating balance, intelligence, and inevitability. And as the Dominion watched helplessly, the galaxy itself acknowledged the truth. The Terrans had survived, and their final word was clear, precise, and absolute. Justice would prevail, and the universe would never again forget the name of humanity.